depending on how many assumptions you have, you might want to break this out into categories. You might want to break it out into separate tabs. But using our activity-based strategy, as you can see here, we're talking about the thing that we do, right? So in this case, we're using an influencer marketing strategy to attract B2C clients. We identify what the opportunity is for us and how we measure success. Something else that that I've found really useful in helping entrepreneurs put their models together is to put a confidence level on each of your assumptions, so that as you start to refine the experiments you're running in your business, you know that you're experimenting on the right stuff. So for example, if you've already, we've got one here that's an optimization, right? So this is an assumption where we're already doing most of this and we know we do it well. We don't probably need to experiment with anything on this particular assumption. However, if we're new to social media ads, paid social media ads, then we probably need to be a little bit more rigorous with the way that we set up our experiment and the way that we test our results before we go out and make big investments in that particular assumption. So that's one thing that can help you internally. But again, if you start to talk about that with an investor and you say, well, essentially, you know, on the marketing side, most of our assumptions are proven, but we still have 2 or 3 that we're experimenting with. Again, you change categories in the way that investors are really interacting with you and understanding your approach to your business. So again, any particular assumption is going to have different sets of information related to it. And I always encourage people to create start dates and to allow their model to run independently of any kind of, again, hard coding. So instead of going in and kind of saying, well, this is going to start in March and typing it in March, right, which is what you may have seen, you know, people would come into their P&L and just type in what the number is in March. I would encourage you to keep it separate so that if you do decide to shift that from, you know, January to April, it's an easy change like that, and you don't have to change it across all the cells in your model. So those are some of the ways that I would keep your assumptions separate. I actually add in my models the ROI calculation that we talked about before, where I basically say, okay, here's the metric that we're looking for. Here's the total cost. And you'll notice that we look at personnel cost and the hard cost, and we get the cost per result. That allows us to start ranking these different options. And you could see that if I was looking at something that like paid social media ads feels like something that's going to be really expensive. And so if I was looking at this model for a client, I would say to them, hey, why are we spending so much on paid social? You know, do we need to reevaluate those assumptions? Do we need to maybe not do it? Because it's much more expensive, as you can see, than anything else we're doing, right? And so having those numbers calculated for you can then help you make those decisions a lot more easily. Now, there's plenty of other tabs, as you can see here, including the calculations tab. And again, the way that I suggest you set it up is that you have the calculations kind of isolated, so you can always track back if you run into a problem. But this is, you know, again, this is my approach. I think it works well. I do think that the concept of having your assumptions separate and being able to kind of say to an investor, here's what we're assuming, and here's our cost per result, is going to be very impressive and going to allow you to really change the discussion around your financial model. Instead of it being, I don't believe you, or that'll never work, you can actually show an investor the specific steps you're going to take and how much those steps are going to cost you.